Zoom meeting. So Michael from The Rebel Preacher is your
Yes.
name. So the first question really that we'll be wondering is the choice of the name, because it hints at the fact that perhaps you were a zealous evangelist in some way, and then you saw the light, or something changed your mind and you've actually backed away from that. So could you explain your choice of channel name for us?
Yes, ma'am. We when it was really a help from a friend, the name, because I really wanted to start, like you said, zealous. I wanted to go against dogma. I wanted to go against religious structure. I really wanted to just chop it up and everything like that. But and I chose the name, and it's not who I am really. I don't really choose to do that, but it does bring attention to the facts that I am coming against that set authority. Although, you can't change people. Only thing you can really do is just encourage them to see outside of a box sometimes. So I kept the name. I chose I didn't want to for a while, but hey, it is what it is. So really, it's just in context. I'm really against dogma. I'm really against structured religion now in my life, where at one time, as you said, I was a very zealot Christian at one time, especially back in the 80s. I was very strong. And then I went into the same way with Judaism also, when I found out that I was Jewish on my dad's side, and I did convert, to make it halal, make it right in the eyes of Judaism. I was zealous there also, but they both left me. They left me in a form of a prison box religion, but they did not give me the spirituality that I was looking for. Although I will say within Christianity, I was always driven to the mystical, charismatic side. And within Judaism, I was always driven to the more Kabbalistic, spiritual side of it, more than the normative Holocaust situation. So that's where the name comes from. I'm really not a harsh, lash out person, but the Rebel Preacher, I think it really makes you think of what is this guy coming from.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was that once you were a preacher, and then
Yes, I was.
You wasn't sure if that, but I get what you're saying now. You're saying that actually you're spreading the word,
Right.
but in a kind of alternative way. I see. That's brilliant.
Yeah, the
So
name don't fit my personality, because when I hear Rebel Preacher, I think more of a, like you said, but it really isn't who I am at all. But like I said, the name just stuck.
It works. I think it's really good, and the fact that rebel, we all like a rebel.
Right, exactly. Especially when it comes to dogma and religion.
Yeah. Yes. So you mentioned two religion. Now, I was wanting to ask you about, because I knew that you told me, mentioned before, about two different faiths in your life that you've sort of looked into or been with. So take us back to perhaps the beginning and the influences on you when you were a child. What would that have been? Christianity, were you saying?
Brought up in the United Methodist Church back in the day, traditional, go to church on Sunday. Every day, every time the church was open, we were there. And I was raised within the church, and it was who I was. I mean, if you know anything about the Methodists, they're not as they don't go out there and preach a lot. They're more of a method worship back in those days anyway. So it did have a big impact on who I am now, and how I developed, because religion was always a part of my life, even from the youth, and a seek for the Creator, although I didn't understand it back in those days, really defines who I am. So yes, Christianity was a huge part of my early life. It was.
And that's similar to me, because that would have been Wesleyan, and
Yes, same thing.
Holiness tradition, I think it's called.
Yes.
So you actually on the morality and
right.
And
The Wesleyan was an offshoot of Methodism, although there wasn't the same denomination. It's the same, same teachers, the same founding teachers and stuff like that. So they're very, very similar in their views and the ways of worship, and like you said, holiness and stuff of that nature.
Yes. And so then you found out about on your father's side, you said, about the Judaism. So you were interested to look into. What age would you have been then when you were switching?
I was much older.
Would you religions?
Yes, I was much older when I found out. What had happened
Mm,
is, I came within Methodism, and then I went through the circle of Baptists for a while, and then
mm,
Charismatic, Church of God, Pentecostal, all of these things. My journey went through in my Christianity as because I never found, pun what YouTube says, I never found what I was looking for. And every time I would change denomination, I said, well, this has to be it. And all the time in my spirit, I always said, there's got to be more than this, more than this. So when I
yeah,
was much older, in my 30s, matter of fact, I had found out
yeah,
from my uncle. He says, Mike, we have Judaism on uh, our side, which is the daddy's side. And I was at the
yeah,
time visiting a Messianic synagogue and stuff like that because my friend was the rabbi, but I never had any intentions of really wanting to get too much involved with that. But when I heard
yeah.
that, it did drive me more closer to that, away from the church scene, more
Mm,
into the Messianic synagogues. And if you know anything
mm,
usually about that, Messianic synagogues take you mostly to Judaism because you start finding there's a lot of cracks that you start seeing in foundations within dogma and stuff like that. And you just move on from there. You just move on. So I went from church into Messianic Judaism at that time. And then that's when I found out
yeah.
I had Judaism on my daddy's side.
Okay, so do you are there any sort of the practices from either of those two faiths that you still value and that you still use?
Not
Would you
really.
say?
Not really. I mean, I am still that person. I'm still very spiritual. I'm still very driven in study and meditation and stuff of that nature. But no,
Yeah,
I mean, within Christianity, if I had to identify with anything today, it would be more the Gnostic side of the
yeah,
Sophia, see the divine feminine, understanding how maybe we got here through their interpretation. But I think
mm,
even back, and I'll tell you a quick story. The
mhm,
Dead Sea Scrolls came to Mobile, Alabama, on a big expedition, and I didn't, really didn't care, but I went to it, and it changed my life because there is where I learned about the Book of Enoch, and then I started learning about this group of Jews called the Essenes, or that we think of them. We don't really know, but I found out the spiritual side of it. And from that time on, even when I went into Judaism, that changed my life. The Dead Sea Scrolls, the Book of Enoch, and this really opened up my eyes to more of the Gnostic understanding of who
yeah.
Jesus and what God, creator, we really don't know, put us here. So that moment that I went to the Dead Sea Scroll exhibits and I learned about the Book of Enoch and I started understanding this stuff, that changed my life, probably to the direction of where I am now. But as far as anything I hold on to, no, I don't. I don't hold on to any of the dogmas. Although, Christmas,
Yeah,
these seasons are still special. I
yeah,
still see like when Christmas comes along, and I've discovered Yule also during this time. And then when I
yeah.
start seeing, even in Judaism, when Saturday comes along, no, I don't do Shabbat and all this stuff, but yet I still see a day of peace and of just kick back and relaxing for that day. Nothing legal. Nobody, I don't feel like anybody should have to do any of that, but that's just, you ask me if any of this stuff stays with me, and that's what I've learned.
That's fascinating that they were actually bringing the scrolls. I didn't know that, that they were actually an exhibit so that it was traveling and physically they were coming into your, geographic location. How
Yes.
interesting that you might
It was in
have felt
Mobile,
so.
Alabama, which it's on the Gulf Coast here, and they
Yeah.
rented out a big auditorium, and they brought the fragments, and they had the whole scroll of Isaiah in there. So it really, but really, this is funny, Jim. The most the people that were in charge of this exhibit were atheists and agnostics and stuff like that. They didn't believe in any of this stuff really. And I got a private tour being a messianic teacher at that time, rabbi, and the lady that was showing us this stuff wasn't an atheist, but she really had a Gnostic flair about her. She really understood more of the spiritual things than she did the
Mm,
dogma, what I would call it. So she really had a real impact on me, explaining to me these scrolls from a more historical understanding.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
guess that was the different, that started destroying the foundations also of Christianity and Judaism within my life also, because a lot of things as they appear just aren't as they appear.
No, and I can imagine that there's something sacred about actually being that close physically to these original documents, you know, and thinking that it's
Right,
a core connection
right,
back to the beliefs of those people that wrote it. I think that's fascinating.
right. It was very humbling because you see him writing
Yeah.
2,000 years old, probably more than that.
Yes. 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 So I've been interested lately in the and realised that we've been looking at the Pistis Sophia, as you know,
Right,
and about Sophia and the divine feminine. And I know you left a comment about the divine feminine, and then I heard that, and I confess I didn't really know this, that the Shekinah, which is the name for Holy Spirit, is actually a
right,
female
right,
name. You know, going back
right,
in the Kabbalah, that she's still spoken of as a female,
right.
and that she is the one that sends out the sparks of light or gathers up the sparks of light. So there's lots of similarities
Correct.
to when we spoke here, and there's overlap there. So I mean, I don't know if that's something that you know more about, or could I know I've put you on the spot here, but I
I wouldn't
mind.
say I know. Yeah, I wouldn't say I know more about it, but what I did was I tied it all together. When I started looking within Kabbalistic, the like you said, the Shekinah, the Malkut, the bottom part of the tree of life, and when I started studying within Christianity, the Sophia, the Mary Magdalene connection, and then when I started seeing Isis, and I started seeing Freya within the Nordic traditions, and I started seeing this clarity that there is definitely a divinity, feminine divinity out there. And over the time, I have actually changed my views of the creator to more of a male understanding, to more of a female, because to me, it just makes sense that it would be a feminine. And even today's world, the feminine is, childbirthing and stuff like that. So I've really got into studying of the Sophia. And then even in ancient Kabbalistic Lilith, which people don't want to talk about, we see all of these women influences within the spirituality, and it's drawn me. Now, how the feminine works within me, I don't know. I'm still trying to learn how the divine, but it has really driven me into this area of understanding that consciousness or the creator or whatever you want to call it is to me is feminine. It's not male. It's a feminine
Yeah,
spirit, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to get caught up on terminology, but yes,
yeah.
that's where I'm coming from also too.
Can I just ask you to say a little bit more? You might not want to, but just about Lilith, you mentioned in passing and said people don't want to talk about that.
Mm-mm.
And it may be that I don't know a great deal about. You wouldn't
Right.
if you had a Christian background. So people listening might be interested to just know, can you just explain to the
Sure.
feminine,
Right.
but I think difference, isn't she?
Yes, well, and the fact of the matter within Kabbalistic understanding, Lilith was actually the first wife of Adam. And if you see in scripture, she was not created by his side. She was actually created the same way Adam would have been created. Now we know this is all we know there's more to the story than just the physical understanding of this. But basically, the to bring it real simple, Lilith did not want to take upon the position of a servant. She didn't want to take upon that thing as
Mm.
and I don't, a male chauvinist, she didn't want to be that person to have to follow. And it's been made negative because today's religions have made the female, they push the female down. They've taken the irrelevance of females out of it completely. And not get on the tangent, but God that they served within the Old Testament actually had a wife. And that's what many people do not realize when you study real Judaism, pre-elected
Yeah,
Judaism, God had a wife. And the stories you hear about the Asherah poles that we got to take these things down, it's because they used to use these poles to worship God's wife. But
yeah,
we see a
yeah,
major move within early Christianity and Judaism to push the feminine down or out
yeah,
completely. So first thing we have to do, we got to Lilith is a witch. She's mean. She's just after you. We demonize her. And then Mary Magdalene, the church made her a whore, excuse me, a prostitute or whatever. So we see how men, and I'm
yeah.
not coming against my men, folks. I'm just trying to say history shows that we have forced the feminine out of the spirituality, even within churches and Judaisms and stuff with today.
This is so interesting. And I tell you, you won't even know this, but I've been reading or looking at the book by Anne Baring, Aring, called The Myth of Goddess.
Right.
And it's a poem. It took 20 years to write. She wrote it with Anne Cashford, and it actually Jules Cashford, and it actually documents the from prehistoric times, you know, and then Egypt, and then Greece, and Roman and Babylonia, and all this, and the way in which the female goddess was very prominent, you know, and the in terms of just like the moon and birds and whatever. And then when we get to Judaism and Yahweh, we're halfway through the book, and it's as though they just cut off all of
Right.
that history and wrote the female out.
Correct.
And even then, when you have Christianity and you have the Nicaea, the Council of Nicaea, and they decide on the Trinity, you know, they could have had the female aspect there as the Holy Spirit, and it wasn't. They used the male pronoun for all three. And I think that this is why it's this unbalance, because we've lacked the feminine in you know, in religion. And then of course religion is the bedrock of civilization and so on, and the you know, the modern society. And so it's very interesting. So Lilith is kind of the spirit of Lilith maybe rising to say we need that rebalancing. And I also think, I mean, I also think that it's not simply man and woman fighting against each other, because that's really culturally relevant at the moment, isn't it? This idea of, you know, of feminism being something against the patriarchal, you know, and it's a culture war, whereas in actual fact, it's a very complementary relationship, but we've almost been herded into the wars, because the patriarchy isn't being helpful to men. It's not allowing men to be men, because they're having to behave a certain way and not being able to be in touch with these aspects of physical of the male and female within themselves. It's fascinating.
Right. Well, it is, and there's actually a book I got, the Lilith. Sorry, it's a tongue twister, and it's really her story. And I don't know if it was channeled. I don't know how we got the information. You know, I don't know, but she basically says in the book that Yahweh, you mentioned Yahweh, that he hates
Yes.
women, that he, you know, that he just does not like women whatsoever. And that Lilith, when you look at the tree of life, that we know the traditional story within Christianity and Judaism, that Lilith may have represented the serpent, not as an evil being, but to no, Eve, you can eat of this. You can be free of this. You don't have to be under this thing. And when she ate upon that thing, her eyes were open, and it says she gave it to Adam, and his eyes were open. And I believe it's a different story than what we understand within Christianity and Judaism today.
Yeah, I think so. And when we're talking about Yahweh, we're talking about an idea of God, aren't we? That's a projection of us. So we're not being blasphemous in truth, because we're wanting to get back to the true creator. We're wanting to get back to the mystical heart of what's the origin of all religion. So this is kind of critical thinking, but it isn't. It's recognizing that this idea that we have of God. And I find that really fascinating, because I do think when people reject religion, maybe they think they become atheist.
Right. They do. Many do.
God, but they're rejecting an idea of God. And atheism, if you go to atheism and it's nihilistic and you just say, I don't believe in anything, then you're denying a part of yourself that very deep down intuitively, you know, the spirit from within, it will be heard and may emerge. You thought, whatever. Yeah, really interesting.
Well, it is, because the fact of the matter is when you look at the whole patriotic system, and like you said, I like what you said. There is one creator. There is one idea of consciousness, Sophia, whatever you want to call it. But we have what we call archons that are either like Jung taught within our mind or whatever they are, gives us warped concepts of who the true creator is. And it gives us this religious dogma that, oh, I'm not good enough. I'll never be good enough to serve this God. I've got to have, I'm not being disrespectful. I've got to have Jesus's blood, or I can't be in good relation with this. And it's all, I think it's more, Jill, within our minds than it is archons outside of it. But it's more
Yes.
of it's more like you teach on healing all the time. I used to believe in
Yeah.
Tikkun Olam. I used to believe within the Jewish concept of Tikkun Olam. I don't believe that no more, because I believe we are not even in the condition to fix this world until we fix ourselves. And that can take several lifetimes to do that. So I can't fix the world if I can't fix myself first. I cannot tell Jill who I think the creator is unless I'm journeying and seeking and going through showing my battle scars of who I'm trying to discover who this is. So I can't help this world except to be a positive influence, a spark, But I've changed my views of, I don't believe in Tikkun alone no more, although I think it's a great concept. But I think there's so many broken people in this world that can't even fix themselves, will never fix this world without help.
Yes. It's interesting. What was it that you mentioned then? Takuma, you don't believe in what anymore?
Tikkun alone, which in Judaism means to fix repairs of the world's what it means. It means that we are here to fix what was broken. Well, the problem is, and Jesus
Yeah.
said this came to me, that unless the wineskins have been renewed, they can't hold
Yeah.
new wine. So we keep on
Yeah.
coming back from generations, repairing this world, but we're not fixed ourselves. Some of us, and I'm not being critical here, don't even realize we need healing. I didn't realize it for 50 some years that I needed healing from
Yeah.
past things, So your book opened that up really about all of that. So really 50 something
Yeah.
years of my life of trying to fix this world when myself was broken was kind of a hypocritical statement. So I really think that what we're talking about now, healing within ourselves, is where it starts. That's how we heal the world.
Goosebumps when you're talking. It's so exciting, and it comes back to what you said. You said something. Then you said it's. I don't believe it's literally. You said this is about the mind when you talked about the
Right.
archons about mind, and absolutely, because the myth. When we talk about
Yes.
myth, it's just an analogy that helps us understand something. And what Jung did, as you say, he took that idea that existed in myth, and then it helped him illustrate what he believed about the mind, because you can't talk about something so abstract that you can't even get hold of the subject matter. So you have
Right.
to use a sort of visual story. And you're quite right. What came to my mind as you were talking was that it's layers of consciousness. We talk about in the Pistis Sophia it being levels of consciousness that has a ceiling. And you want to get beyond that. You're crying because you want to get beyond that, but it has a ceiling. And this is what you say about religious thinking and belief systems. They trap. That's how they trap you in. It can feel metaphorically. It feels like you come to a ceiling and you can't get beyond that, and something is pushing you. And I also like the way you said, Michael, that it's just constantly evolving. You said I've
It,
changed how I think, and it just evolves all the time because it's a journey. And it's so interesting to hear you describe this.
Well, the fact of the
Uh,
matter is we are just everything we're going through, everything that we're
yeah.
taught through television, through religion, through politics and stuff is keeping us away from the discovery of who we truly are. And I think this is the whole thing that Jesus, when he was teaching, or with Buddha, all of these great guys were teaching us to come out of ourselves, to leave this matrix, or try to work on leaving these ideas that we have been taught to. And we need to, I mean, come on, Jill. You don't think the Norse really believe, I mean, they may have at the time, but like Nordic tradition, which I love to study, Thor, these people, they're energies. They're not actually people. I'm not saying there wasn't a Thor at one time or no, not, I don't care about that. They're
Yeah.
energies that they are plugging into to help them discover more who the creator is all it is. Same thing within Christianity. The Christ is an energy. It is the consciousness of the divine, and that's what we're waking up into. But when we start putting it into real myths, we start really believing these things, I think it robs us of who we are and what we're trying to do. You're divine enough. You don't need salvation. You need healing, and once you receive your healing, everything else will come to pass.
Yeah.
Not an easy
And
journey.
to think well, the Christ being the choice of free will to think for yourself, because you don't realize that you don't have free will if you are running the program
Right.
that,
Right.
so the free will to be able to choose and break through different cultural traditions and limitation of thinking. It's really interesting. I'm interested to know more about the Norse. I'll have to start following your channel, which we will mention at the end, but we'll just now, because I know that you upload and you chat about your reflecting on just daily events, but also on how your journey, your faith journey is developing. So I'm sure that you'll be saying stuff that I'd be learning from, because I know little about. So it's at the well, I don't know what your at is. It's a little bit different, but the Rebel Preacher,
Right.
that's the channel, and subscribe there if you're not
Right.
subscribed already. We'll mention it at the end. I wanted to just ask you if you have, because I went to entitle this Faith Shifts, and I will go back and give a fuller description of it, but Faith
Right.
Shifts, shifting faith, we've been talking about. And I know that some people, one of the things that perhaps I haven't appreciated quite so much is that for some people it's hard because their whole support network is tied up in church. And it could even affect losing a job within the community. If you suddenly stop going to church, or you change your views, your group of friends, your disapproval from family, and you could find yourself ostracized. I wonder if you had any experience of that, or if you know that to be the case more
Yes.
so where you live than it would perhaps be for me in the UK.
Yes. My parents, my mother, my father, he passed away a few years ago, but he was always respectful of my journey. He never, he didn't agree with me a lot, but he didn't question it. He just knew I was on the journey. My mother thinks I'm
Yeah.
crazy because I'm able to process all of this. And the fact of the matter is when, we feel like we need community, and we do. And, we do need fellowship and talking and stuff. But we are taught from the beginning that if you're not in a community, a church building or a synagogue or a mosque or whatever, that you cannot understand God, or you cannot understand the Creator, or you cannot understand all of this. So I battled for years trying to get my family into a community, feel like, and this is what I had to do to seek God. Honestly, I needed people to help me raise my children and myself and everything like that. When you start studying this, you see this is not true whatsoever. It is what we're told, and it would be nice to have a local community of people that are seeking together. But
Yeah.
in reality, all of the great seekers were alone. They didn't have communities because they were ostracized and stuff of that nature. If you read the book of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and you see the persecution she goes through from quote unquote Jesus's disciples, of how they really felt about her, you'll be understanding of where your position will be also, because many people don't feel like you can do this without a church or a synagogue and stuff. So yeah, I faced this. I faced persecution from just turning on me, won't even talk to me no more. They
Really?
just they some people cannot accept anything outside of the box. That's just unfortunately, and
Yeah.
I may have been there at one time too. This may be something I'm working through myself. So I may have been that person 30, 40 years ago, but I'm not now. But
Yeah.
yeah, I have been. Yeah, people tend to think you're a little nutty when you start thinking like I do. It may
Yes.
be.
It's the path of the mystic, isn't it? The path of the
Yes.
mystic is a low path. And it just made me think that when because they want to keep you out there, not going in within, so that they can define, and then it becomes something that can be controlled. You can control people's thinking and behavior, and this is why it lends itself, that kind of belief lends itself to the church and state together. And I've heard you talking about the church and state, and how it can become a political club. So religion, Christianity, often, mostly, I don't know, the religions as well, I'm sure, that become tools or for just control politically,
Right.
in the world. And whereas when you go within, it's lonely in one sense, but in another sense, there is a community and a communion because of the witnesses, the cloud. I do think that you actually feel that there is um, a, a community that's a
Yeah.
different kind of
Yes.
And now we have the internet, of course. We do find there are other people who think the same as us, so it's not quite as lonely, and it would
Thank
have been
God.
even.
Right. Well, I feel like
Yeah.
these things that you're talking about, these religions, in
Mm.
Kabbalah, you have what you call the shells, or your the best way to describe it would be like a pecan with the shell around it. The shell protects the pecan and everything. And I do believe a lot of people look at Kabbalah and say, "Oh, you've got to get out of this and stuff." But I think these shells sometimes protect us until we are ready to grow. Because I don't
Yeah.
know where I would be if I didn't have the traditions that I grew up in, even within Judaism and Christianity. I may not have been
Mm.
where I am today. I mean, I think that they protected me from maybe, like you said earlier, going atheist, nihilist,
Yeah.
deist, or whatever you want to call yourself. The thing of the
Yeah.
matter is these things kept me safe through my growing up, and I don't
Yes.
throw down. I don't throw down on them. I don't hate none of
No.
them. I
No.
just want people.
No.
And like I said, I just want people to see me thinking outside the box, because I can't make them do it. And I really don't have a
Yeah.
goal or a place to send them except on a journey. Is all I'm inviting people. I have no heaven to send them to, or no club or nothing like that. But I do want to open up people to start taking a journey. And if you have to take baby steps, but it starts from healing from
Yeah.
within. Until we heal,
Yes.
we cannot go further. Just straight up.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, and I value what you said, because often within deconstruction, it's all very negative, and that's because people have been wounded a lot of the time, and when they are talking about it, they're still angry, and they're needing to, they have to they kind of reject it, and working through a lot of pain. But I also now, perhaps because I'm a little bit more distant from it, can look back and think, it gave me a foundation. And in particular, it gave me a sense of right from wrong. It wasn't just the fear of hell, it was the sense that if nobody was looking and I was on my own in a room and I did steal something, or I don't know, that God knew. And I didn't mean that because I might get punished and sent to hell. It was a sense of the soul, the
Right.
soul story, and being accountable to the soul, and right and from wrong. And I suppose the equivalent of that would be karma in a different religion. But
Right.
I think that it gives conscience. And I think if you have no sense of belief in the transcendent, if you really believe that it's just the material and this is all there is, and at the end of your life you'll die and it all comes to nothing, that nihilistic reductionist worldview, then no wonder that leads people, well, firstly, it leads to the corruption, because people will just do what they can get away with and live a very
Right.
selfish life. But it also leads to despair and to depression, because it's just no meaning in life. And so I do think that there's something in having a conscience and being a good citizen and knowing right from wrong. And this is what religious upbringing from childhood can give us. But like you say, we grow up, and we leave home and we go out into the world for ourselves. And that's what this maturing, this soul growth is about. And that for many can mean then deconstructing and just moving beyond the limits of institutional religion. So it's
Absolutely.
fascinating. Who would you say were your? Are there any people that you had as role models, or books that you read, that people that influenced you, things
Oh,
you read,
definitely
or
so.
yeah?
Definitely.
Would you
I
like to
think sure, sure.
hear?
Within Christianity, when I started reading books about Smith Wigglesworth, when I started getting to the mythical Christianity. I don't remember a lot of the
Yeah.
authors and stuff like that, but that drove me. But within Judaism, I mean, come on, you're talking that most of the Kabbalistic works are unbelievable. And most of the Kabbalistic rabbis and teachers were ostracized by Judaism. And even today, many of the Kabbalistic, you think it wouldn't be, but they don't really accept them by modern Judaism. So any of the spiritual teachers within Judaism of the Rebbe, I like Billy Phillips from the Kabbalah Center. I mean, I just don't agree with the format of charge, but he's a great author and ties Jesus in with Kabbalah very well. But even today, I mean, I look at people such spiritual giants as I don't know. I can't even. I don't know. I'm going to go back to Sophia. I'm going to go back to Mary Magdalene, the heroes back in the past. By the way, if anyone has watched the movie on Netflix about Mary Magdalene, that's the name of the movie. You need to watch that movie because it's going to give you, to me, a true account of the way Jesus and his disciples truly were and what really happened. And it's going to give you just a hunger to seek more of this. But I have a lot of heroes, but and one that's James the Brother of Jesus by Robert Eisenman totally changed my life. It's a 1,000-page book. I don't expect people to go out and buy it. You got to be a nerd to read it, but it really breaks down to what the Jesus movement truly was. Although he's an atheist, he don't believe in God or Jesus and stuff. He gives you a good idea of what happened during that time period, and you have to start saying, all right, what I'm seeing within the Gospels is just not correct. It was made. Don't mean it's bad. You can get some great wisdom from it. So, there's a lot of books. I've got thousands of books, thousands.
Well, I'll put them in the description. Go back and write them, or perhaps you could just write the names for me.
I can.
And share
Sure.
Sure. Because it's fascinating to know. And you mentioned the movie. Was it Netflix? You said it's on Magdalene.
Netflix. Mary Magdalene.
Really?
Jill, if you don't watch this movie, you're doing yourself such an injustice because it's going to give you a side of Mary Magdalene and let you see her battle of what she was going through in her life and how she felt that, being a lady, God didn't care about her. She was always, but anyway, you got to watch the movie. It's very good.
I've been thinking what to watch next, so there you go.
You'll love it. I promise you.
It's so interesting. I could talk to you for ages. This is really. I'm not even looking to see if we've got people. Oh, we have. I've got quite a few people. Let me just see. Shelley is there. Hi, Julie is there. Look forward to watching from the beginning. Yes, we had a bit of a false start because I thought I'm glad we didn't do the whole thing because it would just look as if I wouldn't have been able to show the reaction to some of the stuff that you're saying, which is. We did start again, but it is working. I'm sure that people will find it, even if they didn't manage to get us from the beginning to read back, watch it back. What else was I going to ask? I sent you a few little prompter questions, didn't I?
Right.
Any advice? That's what we were to say about. I've asked you about clean food. Any advice to people who,
yes,
maybe beginning of a deconstruction journey and feeling a little bit disoriented? Feeling, it's not an easy process. So any advice for people?
Yes. First of all, if you're not subscribed to Jill, get subscribed to Jill and start learning the healing. Start listening to what she's saying about the healing. And, and I've watched your journey over a year too, and you've taken like huge jumps and strides even from that time. The book is excellent. And, that technique, I can't pronounce it. I wish I could. It starts with an H, but I have actually, yeah, that's good. I have actually, listened to other people teaching upon this thing, and it's a very solid technique of self-healing and discovery of who you are, because your book says so. If you don't deal with who you are, your anger, your frustration of who you are within yourself, if you cannot find peace within here, and even Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within. And if the kingdom of God is within, and I've already said, I believe we're all divine anyway. I believe we're all perfect. We just can't remember who we are. We just cannot remember who we are. And I think that's where the Divine Mother is calling us out. And I don't care who you call her. I'm not getting into dogma. But I believe she is calling us out at this time that we're living in, because we do need these true mystics to stand up. We need true shamanism. We need all these things. So there's a lot of healing that needs to be done in these people and earth, and nature's waiting for us to heal. Everything is waiting for us to heal, except we don't think we need healing. We need a salvation plan, but we don't. We need waking. So my first advice would be to subscribe to your channel and get your book. Second thing is learn meditation. To learn, and you did a video a couple of weeks ago about knowing the voices, that listening to the voices to make sure that you're listening, different spirits and stuff like that, that you did, to be careful, because something fake could attach to this and you think you're speaking to something that you're not. Very good video upon that. And that's very important to know how to listen and to know what is your ego and what is true. And because your ego will deceive you, your ego will give you, tell you stuff that you want to hear and stuff like that. But the divine mother, that's what I'll say, is calling us out of that. So, but that was a very good video you did about be careful about who
And
you
what
listen to.
I can't remember which one you meant, and I know there was one lenient and listen, but I'll have a look and chat with you later. So perhaps I could put that link,
Right.
because that we can, if people can then look at the exact video. But yeah, what are the fruits? How would you know? I think that it's the peace and the joy, isn't it? You just get this joy because it lifts your vibration. If it's something that's pure and high and holy, it's you, and it'll emerge as your thought. I think this is the other thing when you meditate. I think you're right to say meditation because you think nothing's happening. You think, well, you're just sitting quietly and then bored and nothing's happening. But even if you can only manage just 5 minutes, I think when we do the Friday lives, it's never very long. I think it's usually perhaps about 7 minutes that we are sitting. And I know that I'm moving my, I don't have to be, I could be just sitting. But actually in that stillness and silence, something changes because you're in a different place where you are listening, and you're developing a kind of attunement to more subtle energy. So you feel if something's not right, if something doesn't quite feel right, you can't explain why. When there might be these other influences, these false spirits, if you want to say that. But yeah, it's really, really interesting. And I think that's it, the deepening. I use this term, the deepening, which
Well,
is
there was a show on the History Channel a few years ago called The Vikings. And I don't want to give it away, but at the very last of it, there in the episode, these Vikings had made it all the way across the ocean to America and started teaming with the Indians were helping them, or the Native Americans were helping them live in this culture over here. And they found out a lot of their traditions were the same as far as, the pagan thoughts and every this nature. And at the very end, the spiritual guy for the Vikings, who always seek the blessings of Odin and Thor, the guy asked him, he says, "Do you believe in any of this anymore?" And he says, "No, not really." I mean, I'm paraphrasing. Basically, no, it's all energy is what it is. It's all energy, and it's all just dealing with dealing with life the way we can, and meditation and anything that to me that elevates your thinking and your happiness and your love is good. I mean, I also we do crystals. We have crystals and stones and stuff like that that we'll use for different energies. And I'm not a new age guy. I don't anyway. But we'll do crystals and candles and anything just to calm you down to where you can reflect upon who you are. And like I said, when I look at these gods of Jesus, the demigods of Jesus and Thor and all, these are energies that I need within my life. I need the peace of Jesus, of the Christ. I need the presence of that peace. And maybe there's times I need that spirit of, I'm just going hypothetical, of Thor to protect my family. Maybe something's going up and I need that energy. I'm not looking to somebody up there. I'm looking something within myself that's already here. So it's all energy to me, and that's why meditation is so important.
And I think that what you said about crystals and things, for some people who've got a very strict background, there are certain things that are taboos, and for me it took a long time to drop some of these taboos, and it's being able to just soften those because there's a lot of judgment around it. And I know that you mentioned my videos and how I've evolved, and I think so myself. When I look back at some of the early ones, I spent a lot of time having to explain and
Right.
justify what I defend, as though I was talking to an apologist and I was going to get criticized. A little critic in me that was saying, shouldn't be even saying this or thinking this or using this because it's wrong. And so over time, that just drops away. You don't feel that you have to explain yourself anymore, and it just gets easier. And you can relax into it. And if something's helpful, use it. If not, don't use it. But there aren't any taboos,
Right.
because you were going deeper, and as we go deeper, the things that we want to do, some of the things that perhaps are on the surface just won't meet our deeper needs, so you let go of them anyway.
Right.
But they're not wrong. You don't have to fear them for being wrong. And so it's all interesting, and I recognize that different people are different places on the journey. And so I like to keep saying it's a journey, because I'll be making videos now that maybe in 5 years' time I'll look back and think, gosh, was I really thinking that then? But that's what's fun. It just dialogue going, isn't it?
I
And
leave
we
mine
make
up. I used to go through and delete when I would change my belief or understanding. I used to go back and just erase all those
friends.
videos. But now
Yeah.
I'm making a journal to families and friends or whoever wants to know me. They are going to walk my journey with me, is what they're going to do.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, this has been fascinating, and I'm so glad that, I've learned a lot. I'm going to watch this back, and I'm especially interested in, like Freya and some of the gods of the Norse gods, which is all very interesting and not something I know a great deal about. You've
Right?
mentioned some books and a film to watch. Like I say, we'll get it all in the description, then people can look at those, and where there are links, we may be able to put some links in there too.
If
And
you're not watching Mary Magdalene, I'm sorry to interrupt. If you don't watch that movie, you're not a true mystic. I'm telling you, you're going to watch it and you're going to say, oh, it's going to answer so many questions for you. And if you don't read the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, you're robbing yourself of a blessing also. She is so inspiring to me. The true Mary Magdalene is so inspiring to me that
and I believe,
she's taken me to another place.
yeah, and I think the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, I think it is, correct me if I'm wrong, is in the Nag Hammadi library, is
Yes,
it?
yes,
It is, isn't it?
yes.
A big book I've got. Now you've actually given me a challenge and a task to get looking at that one. I'm a bit overwhelmed. There's so much to go on. It's where to start, but maybe
Right,
that's prompting to look at her.
right.
I'll watch the film. Okay, well, Michael, thank you so much for your time
Thank
today.
you.
At the beginning of the day, the light's starting to fade here in the UK, so we're at the other end. But we will just remind people, well, we'll see, hopefully, but we will remind them that your channel is The Rebel Preacher.
Right.
And go over there and have a look at some of your uploads and make sure that you subscribe. And please do keep teaching us more, because it's fascinating about you're learning about. So that we can learn and journey together. It's wonderful.
That's awesome.
So anything else that you want to say? Final words?
Yes, thank you for all you do and how much time you put into the community. Because I know, well, we go back a year ago, you did do videos, but you didn't put in much as you are now. So you're definitely pouring in much more of your teachings and stuff for us out here. Second of all, just everyone keep open. Don't, come out of that judgmental, come out of that preconceived notion, because I think you'll find out that you're going to be taken to places that you never thought you would ever be. And it's all good because the word you said is true. It's a journey. It's not a destination. We're not trying to go to heaven. We do want to go somewhere. But what I'm saying is we want to find it here on earth as we're walking here.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, thank you. And thank you to everybody at home that's watched live. Thank you to people watching back on playback. I will see you on Tuesday. Well, there'll be an upload on Tuesday. And who knows what direction it's going in. Plan to do soul. I think we want to look at soul, but I
Yes.
might bring in some of the today. We'll see where we go about it. And then on Friday live, those of you can join 2:00 on Friday. We're going to be here every week so that people know, and then it becomes something that you can that more people will join us for that. So because the healing's important, as you say,
That's
that
right.
being it's the experiencing of it together that is really special. Okay,
Right.
so thank you. God bless you. Take care. Have a good day, and thank you to
You too.
everyone else for.
Thank y'all.
Bye.